How strong is beyond Netero? That's what I'm gonna go over today. For starters, I already have a video going into detail about Beyond's personality and his involvement in the manga, so as I make this video, I'll be saying certain things about his personality. So if you haven't seen that video, either go watch it or just accept what I'm saying is true. Today I want to get into how strong Beyond likely is, what his Nen affinity may be, and then give a few theories on what his Nen abilities might look like. Before I go any further, I will say that until we see him show off his powers, it's impossible to say for sure how strong he is. However, that doesn't mean we can't make an educated guess. If you already feel you're convinced Beyond is incredibly strong, I'll put the times for where you can skip to get straight to Beyond's Nen affinity and potentially Nen abilities. A lot of creators have already given their theory on what Beyond's Nen type is, but before I join them in doing that, I want to convince you and give you a good idea of how strong Beyond likely is. We do have a slight problem when trying to gauge Beyond's strength, and is that we don't have too much to go off of. The only real shows of strength we ever really see is his incredible intelligence, him likely trying to intimidate the Zodiacs with either his aura or just his mere presence, and then the fact that Beyond has gone to the Dark Continent, and unlike others such as his father, he wants nothing more than to go back, and that is the biggest clue to how strong he may be. On his journey to the Dark Continent, Beyond came across one of the 5 calamities, which are 5 creatures who have all been stated to be more dangerous than the Chimera ants. This was stated by both Cheadle and Jing. Both times they don't specify whether that includes the Royal Guard and Miriam, but as I'll soon go over, the 5 calamities are almost definitely stronger than Miriam, even post-Rosebomb Miriam, in terms of raw power, not necessarily direct fighting capability. And then when it comes to saying the calamities are stronger than all of the Chimera ants, you could just accept it, but let me give you an argument as to why and how the 5 calamities, along with whatever the most dangerous creatures on the Dark Continent are stronger than all of the Chimera ants, including Miriam. Jing does say the ants were from the outside world. However, that outside world includes plenty of islands that are not the Dark Continent itself. But even if they are directly from the Dark Continent, the ants we see cannot be used as an example of the true strength that lies on the Dark Continent. This is because of how young and inexperienced they were. Because remember, Miriam was alive for only 40 days. But I will quickly say, assuming there are other Chimera ant queens on the Dark Continent, I feel confident to say, because of the way they evolve, they are likely some of the strongest creatures there. And although it's just a pure guess, I will also confidently say a Chimera ant king that had years to evolve and become stronger would view Miriam as nothing more than an annoying bug. But back to my main point, the Chimera ants we saw are not a true example of the Dark Continent's strength. Which leads to the question of what is a true example. Well, that brings us to Nanika, the creature from the Dark Continent possessing Killwa's sister, Alluka. First of all, I'll start off by saying it has not been confirmed how or when Nanika came into the human world. However, there is evidence that Nanika is one of the 5 calamities To quickly go over everything, because her power is to grant someone any wish or their greatest desire, that comes close to matching the description of the calamity which is codependence of desire, a gaseous life form Nanika and Alluka are more or less codependent, and Nanika's power grants people their greatest desires. There's also the fact that every time Nanika grants a wish, she says I. And I'll say that in the Viz translation she says K, but in Japanese she says I. This is important because the calamity can also be seen saying the same thing. Then for the gaseous part, well, that doesn't really matter so much because Alluka at some point was likely possessed by like it was a demon or something. Also, there's the fact that could have just been basically chilling in the human world until it somehow came across Alluka. Then there's the fact that when Nanika kills someone, it looks just like the victims from one of the expeditions to the Dark Continent. But regardless, it doesn't matter too much if Nanika is If they're the same creature, it just allows the statement of being considered more dangerous than the Chimera ants chance to be applied to Nanika, further supporting things I'm about to say. But either way, she's an incredibly strong creature from the Dark Continent and has almost definitely lived long enough and become strong enough to be considered a true show of the Dark Continent's power. Nanika possesses, without question, the strongest Nen ability we've ever seen. Although you might have to make an incredible sacrifice to meet the demands, Nanika's wish-granting powers seem to be limitless. Not only that, when she revives Gon, we're shown, in my opinion, the strongest aura or display of Nen we've ever seen. The aura is sensed by multiple people, who all have a reaction implying it is indeed that powerful. Even Illumi loses his mind with excitement because of how strong it is. And these other reactions include Morel, Nav, Nana, Cheadle, Jing, Periston, and the Zoldyck family. Now I could probably make a whole other video about how each reaction proves how strong Nanika is, but I'm not going to get into it that much. Besides, I will defend against one potential argument I can see happening, and it's all about Nav. If Nanika is stronger than Miriam, when Nav felt her power, wouldn't he have lost his mind even more than he did when he sensed Poof's N? Well, no. First of all, when he sensed Poof's N, it was a hostile and evil aura. It was also likely the first time he ever directly felt any creature that strong, and that's why he lost it. But now he has a much greater idea of how strong creatures can be. But on top of all that, there's the fact that it wasn't even the strength really that he sensed that made him so scared. It was the fear of what they'd do to him. He wasn't scared of being beaten up. He was scared that they'd torture him in the worst ways he could imagine. He also says he wouldn't be able to resist and would eventually give up any and all information that they wanted. So to me, there's a big difference between being scared of how strong someone is and then being scared of knowing you'll be tortured in the worst ways imaginable and through that betraying your comrades. So I think it makes sense that Nav didn't have the same or worse reaction to Nanika's aura. There's also the fact that Nanika's aura likely had a different feel entirely. It likely had a more neutral feeling and was just an intense raw power. He likely knew he was going to be okay due to where he was, and he didn't feel under attack. He was with a bunch of people with a hunter association right next to him. And finally, it's not like sensing Poof's N ruined him forever. He's helping with the voyage to the Dark Continent, although he's not going all the way. But back to talking about Nanika's power. Nanika's aura and Nen output is far beyond anything Miriam has ever displayed, excluding maybe his N. You can even compare the greatest shows of Nen to hers, such as Netero's Zero Hand, Gon's adult transformation, and Miriam's aura pre and post Rose Bomb. And each time, hers is shown to be greater. And once again, even if you don't think her aura reaching up into the sky is greater than other displays we've seen, there's lots of narrative implications that it's that strong. For example, Nanika's power was sensed by all important Nen users anywhere in the area. Even further away was Illumi, who, like I said, lost his mind with excitement because of the power. Even the Zoldyck family was shocked and maybe even scared by the power they saw just on a video. And this includes Silva, who made light work out of a standard Chimera Ant soldier. Also, in the grand scheme of what Nanika is likely capable of, the power she produced was likely nowhere near her maximum power. All this is just me trying to make the point that in just about every way, Nanika has been shown to be the strongest character we've ever come across in terms of everything the anime covers. And then all of that goes back to the fact that Beyond has seen the power of a calamity, which we can compare to some extent to Nanika. You also have to consider what the power of a creature would be that had Nanika's power but put into a different ability. And Beyond likely knows creatures that strong exist, yet he still wants nothing more than to go back to the Dark Continent, and has the confidence he can handle it. Finally, just to make sure you hear what I'm saying, Nanika is a great example of how powerful creatures on the Dark Continent are. She also proves to be far stronger than Miriam in her own way. Beyond knows the danger of the Dark Continent, yet still has confidence in his power. Now, if that line of thinking isn't good enough for you, here's another way that I'd argue that Beyond would turn out to be one of the strongest characters we've ever seen. From a writing perspective, I think you're meant to believe Beyond is strong enough to handle most things on the Dark Continent. Mind you, I'm saying handle, not that he's stronger or would definitely win. Also, with most stories that involve powers and strength, it doesn't make much sense for the expansion of that type of world to introduce introduce major characters weaker than the ones we previously knew, especially when we're expanding into the Dark Continent where creatures like Nanika and fully matured Chimera ants exist. And also, Togashi is expanding on the characters that had previously been hinted to be incredibly strong, such as Jing. But we also have things such as the royal family and Nen Beast, who are all being shown to be stronger than a lot of Nen users we've come across. For example, I'd argue that even though we haven't seen him fight with much power, Saragnek is trying to be shown similar to Miriam, not only in his character but his strength. I say this because he's almost, if not meant to be, a parallel to Miriam. Let me explain. They're both born into their own forms of royalty, meant to take the throne and either take over or lead the world. They both were more or less born with Nen but didn't know it existed or how to use it. Saragnek is also learning Nen and proving himself to be a powerful Nen user as fast, if not faster, than Miriam. A huge part of how Miriam was shown to be such a threat. But then here is where they start to differ, but it continues the parallel. Where post-Roseball Miriam is a monster who's found and chosen his humanity, Saragnek is a human who's essentially chosen to be a monster. The Royal Guard all wanted Miriam to learn and gain power in Nen so he could become the strongest in the world. And although Theta does train Saragnek, she wants to train him slowly, trying to find an opportunity to kill him, in fear of him becoming the strongest. And where Miriam had the strongest Nen users available sent to kill him, Saragnek is almost entirely off limits. And finally, where Miriam was born into the right of king, Saragnek needs to fight for his right. My point with all this is I think Saragnek himself could be stronger than Miriam. It's just the progression of the Hunter x Hunter world and the powers of Nen. Another example is we now have Nen Beast, which is an entirely new concept of Nen. So once again, even if Beyond, Saragnek, and others haven't displayed power greater than Miriam or even Netero, it doesn't mean you can't take narrative implications or just use the fact of how stories progress to assume Beyond and others will become the strongest characters we've ever seen. So that's all the information I can give you to try to convince you that Beyond will be one of, if not the strongest Nen user we've ever come across. So now, onto what Beyond's Nen affinity may be. Because we've never seen his Nen abilities, the only way we can try to guess what his Nen affinity may be is by using his personality. We also need to use two other sources, that being Hisoka's aura-based personality test and some information from Hunter x Hunter Omnibus Treasure, which contains a mixture of things, but most importantly, it gives us some more information about the personality traits of each Nen type. This is also what Hisoka's personality test is. By comparing the personality traits of each Nen type, we can compare that to Beyond. Let's start off with Conjurers. Conjurers are typically overly serious, stoic, and nervous. They're often on guard and they're very observant and logical, rarely falling into traps, analyzing things carefully. Although Beyond does fit the second part of that description, he is not a nervous person. He's actually far from it. And he also never seems to be on guard, like ever. But this isn't because he's not cautious or he's dumb or something. It's because no one he's come across yet has made him feel like he needs to have his guard up. I also wouldn't say he's ever been overly serious. Determined? Yes. Overly serious? Not the way I'd describe him. So considering how many things don't relate to him, I'd say he's not a conjurer. The next option is a manipulator. Manipulators are argumentative and logical. They advance at their own pace and tend to want to keep their families and loved ones safe. But on the other hand, when it comes to pursuing their goals, they don't listen to what others might have to say about it. Once again, we got some parts that do apply to Beyond. Beyond does advance towards his goal at his own pace, and he is very logical, but that's where the similarities end. Beyond is not argumentative, nor does he seem to care about loved ones. He hasn't even shown to care about anyone really, and he has been shown at least hearing others out when it comes to his goal. So once again, we got an affinity that doesn't quite fit Beyond. But what about an emitter? Well, emitters are impatient, not detail-oriented, short-tempered, and quick to react. They resemble enhancers with their impulsivity, but the difference between them is emitters tend to calm down and forget more easily. This is by far the least likely. I'd even say it's impossible for Beyond to solely be an emitter. He's incredibly patient. He was shown creating a plan causing the whole world to give him what he wanted, so to say he's not detail-oriented is just wrong. Then, then, he's never lost his temper or even gotten remotely close to doing so, and not once has he been shown to be impulsive. There's also the fact that emitters often have abilities that allow themselves to fight at long range, and Beyond seems like the type of person to want to fight with his hands, so he's most certainly not an emitter. But could he be a transmuter? Well, transmuters are whimsical, prone to deceit, they have unique characteristics, and many are regarded as weirdos or tricksters. They often put forth a facade while hiding their true personality, and even when they don't hide their personalities, they rarely show their true intentions. This is another Nen type that describes someone nothing like Beyond. Beyond not only has been shown telling just about nothing but the truth, but he shows the type of person he is and his intentions up front. There's nothing he's hiding really. He states what he wants and eventually how he'll get it. He's not a weirdo nor a trickster, and although he's shown to have many plans to get what he wants, that doesn't qualify him as a trickster. So once again, he's definitely not a transmuter. The second to last option is an enhancer. Enhancers are simple and determined. Most of them never lie and hide nothing. They're very straightforward in their actions and thinking. However, their words and actions are often dominated by their feelings, and they are generally very selfish and focused on their goals. Beyond is certainly determined, and has not been shown lying or hiding, at least not much of anything too important. You could say he's straightforward with his actions and thinking. However, I think most of the things he does are slightly more complicated to call them straightforward. Then finally, although he does only care about his own goal, I still wouldn't call him selfish. He's happy to help others if it helps him get to his goal. Now I know that still sounds like he's selfish, but to me he just doesn't come off that way. But even if he is selfish, it's still not enough for him to fit being an enhancer. Finally, his choices are not determined by his emotions. Now you could say Beyond's want or need to go to the Dark Continent is tied to his emotions, but the type of emotion described for an enhancer is more like what we see from Gon. And the best example of this is pretty much everything Gon does and says after Kite is attacked by P2. So although we definitely have some things that match up, Beyond still doesn't quite fit the description of an enhancer, which leaves us with our last option, a specialist. Specialists are independent and charismatic. They won't say anything important about themselves and will refrain from making close friends. However, because of their natural charisma, they do attract others. Right off the bat, if you watched my video about Beyond, you know this is a perfect description. Beyond is certainly independent with how he believes he can explore the Dark Continent on his own, and even likely planned getting there on his own. He's incredibly charismatic, as seen with his speech about going to the Dark Continent, and then again with his personal crew. He hasn't been shown to have any close friends or to be close to anyone. However, just as with the description of a specialist, because of his charisma, he has a group that follows him loyally, this being his personal crew. But not just that, there are also other hunters, such as the Zodiac Sayu, that follow Beyond for likely a number of reasons, but the biggest reason being many hunters want the Hunter Association to be reformed because either they think it's too weak, boring, or lost sight of what it means to be a hunter. And although Beyond has given us information to get a grasp on his personality, this does not mean he's given up important information about himself. The description of a specialist says they won't say anything important about themselves. That doesn't include hiding their personalities. That refers to things such as revealing your Nen ability or Nen type. Or to be more specific to Beyond's case, he hasn't revealed any details about his plans until after they came to fruition. He hasn't revealed when or where he'll try to escape the Hunter Association supervision, and he hasn't revealed anything about his power. So with all of this, I believe we can make an extremely educated guess that Beyond is a specialist. And by knowing that, it allows us to give a guess of what his Nen ability could look like. I'ma say right away, it's literally impossible to guess what his ability could be, even with knowing he's a specialist. However, that won't stop me from having some fun and guessing, which I recommend you do too, because it's fun. Beyond's most important personality traits for figuring out what his ability could look like is his confidence and his need for a challenge. Because Beyond feels the need to be challenged, I highly doubt his ability is anything that would give him an instant win. I know they're not a specialist, but for example, Prince Camilla. She has a full counter ability that whoever kills her, their aura will be sucked out, killing them and reviving her. Also, considering Beyond's confidence, I see his ability being something where he fights hands-on. It's also likely not a defensive ability due to him wanting to be challenged. So I think it's extremely likely that his ability is purely offensive. So what would this ability look like? Well, this is where the real guessing comes in. For starters, I will say most specialists only use one very overpowered ability. And if you remember Saraynek's ability, well, with the buildup we have around Beyond, I do think we can expect something even more overpowered or insane than Saraynek's time-stopping reality warping ability. So keep that in mind as I give you some ideas. I think his ability could be something like Naruto's Baryon mode, where with each attack he exponentially decreases the lifespan of his opponent. He could maybe have an ability like Soifon's ability in Bleach, where she marks a certain point on her target, and if she hits it a second time, she'll kill them. Or in Beyond's case, maybe if he hits the same spot maybe 3 or 4 times, that part of the body is greatly injured. He could even have something like Ultra Ego Vegeta, where the more damage he takes, the stronger he gets, which honestly I could see something like that being true. But to get away from other anime powers, at least the ones I personally know about, maybe as he attacks his opponents, he can steal some of their aura, making himself stronger. I could also see him having an ability where as he fights, he can charge up an attack that he can deliver at a later time. You could think of it like Gon being able to charge up his rock attack as he fights, and the longer he waits, the stronger it'll get. But who knows? Maybe I'm thinking too small. Maybe Beyond will be able to essentially summon some kind of Nen aura transformer type mech suit that he fights people with. Or maybe he could mold parts of his body like Clayface. Then to try to get a little more complicated with the potentials of Nen, maybe he could fulfill certain conditions during a fight, say make his opponent bleed, which then gives him a power increase. Or maybe he fulfills the condition of placing both hands on a body part and it'll be destroyed. Or what if he could steal an opponent's aura and heal himself? To try to guess a little more out there, what if he could enter different modes? For example, one mode increases his speed, another his attack power, and another his defense abilities. Maybe Beyond can somehow nullify someone's net abilities so they both have to fight with brute strength. And then one last final idea, and I'm not sure the best way to describe it, but what if Beyond is either moving so fast or he's almost vibrating that with each punch, the effect is essentially if he hit him twice. I'm gonna stop there because like I said, it's pretty much impossible and therefore useless trying to guess what Beyond's net ability will be. But I wanted to have some fun and maybe say something that gives you an idea of what his ability might look like. But that's all I've got for you now. I hope you enjoyed and I sparked your mind a little bit more to think about Beyond. And as always, feel free to compliment, comment, correct, complain, and argue in the comments.